Hey guys, it's JB Cosplay here, and I first want to start out with apologizing for taking so long to get this video together. I started right after my last video and then just kind of stopped. I started a new full-time job and that really derailed me, and then I just never got back on track. But as you can see, it has been a while. My 3D printers are no longer in here. I've got enclosures in a separate room. I will have a video on that soon, and I promise I'll be on track with having videos coming out on a regular basis. I'm finally getting into the groove of things. As you can also see, I've got the boots painted. I've got both boots finished. First, I want to start out with saying that if you're using ballpoint pen or Sharpie to mark or number any of your foam parts, take some isopropyl alcohol and clean them off. Don't be like me and leave the pen marks on there, especially if you're not going to plasti dip your parts and you're just going to heat seal like what I did. It's really obvious on this boot here. You can see the pen lines there and some of the lines on the back. This was probably 8 or 9 coats of paint on here and it still shows through. I don't know what the heck is in ballpoint pens that makes it show through paint so well, but don't be like me. Use some isopropyl alcohol. Take it off before you paint it. Also, preferably before you heat seal it and close off all the foam cells, and then you can get to painting. But without further ado, let's get started on the build. I first want to point out that this video is going to show how I made the patterns available on my Etsy shop, and then following those patterns to make the Shazam boots. If you want to just skip ahead to following the patterns, the time is going to be listed down in the description below. Alright, to start off, I bought a pair of women's boots from Amazon, mostly because they had the zipper in the back, the shape that I wanted, and were much cheaper than men's boots. And they had all these extra straps and buckles on them, so I very carefully cut them off with an X-Acto knife and a seam ripper. And after cutting all the straps off, they were ready for patterning. Now, I know it doesn't really look like it, but I promise you I am wearing shorts. I just happen to like really short shorts. Now, if you're going to be making the patterns yourself, you're going to start off by wrapping one boot, whichever one, because you can just copy for the other side, in saran wrap. And then after you're fully wrapped in saran wrap, you're going to use duct tape in short strips to duct tape the entire boot. You're going to be cutting yourself out right after that. And I cut along the back zipper since that's where the seam line is going to be, and you need to be able to access the zipper in the back of the boot. And then once you're all cut out, you can just slide your foot out and you can get to drawing the pattern on.
Later that same evening.
After taking my foot out but keeping the duct tape wrap on the boot, I then drew the pattern on. And as you can see, it comes up a lot shorter than the actual height of the boot, but that's okay. We were going to alter the boot anyway. And here you can see I've cut out all the parts and made sure that they can all lay flat so that they'll be good for patterning onto foam. Now's the scary part. I marked off where the top in the back of my pattern is on the back where the zipper is going to go up to, and then I've marked a line that's going to go below the lightning bolt pattern on the boots. That way the red of my suit can show through the lightning bolt. And I just drew a straight line down to the front that I'm just going to sew this over. I'm going to fold this over and sew it. But now's the scary part because it's getting real and sewing into it. So let's do it. One little trick I like to use when working with leather or faux leather and sewing machine is actually keeping some WD-40 nearby and some paper towels. The WD-40 I like to spray on some paper towels and then wipe along on the leather where I'm going to be sewing or what's going to be going under the foot of the sewing machine. It just helps it glide right through, and you can easily just wipe right off afterwards, and it doesn't really end up being a problem. It's really such a big difference of how well it goes through the foot of the sewing machine, and just helps it glide and not stick up and bunch up or anything like that when you're trying to sew parts in straight lines. So sewing everything together should end up with a shape similar to this. I somehow broke my needle Not really sure how that happened, seeing as I didn't hit any metal parts or anything. It just kind of broke. But at least I was already done. So I just ran a straight line along the top, and after I folded it over, I sewed again straight across just to fold over the zipper, and I just cut all the excess material out just so it wouldn't all be stuffed inside the boot, and it gave it a bit of a cleaner inside. It really doesn't matter how well of a straight line or seam you get for this, since it's all going to be covered by foam anyway, but getting a little bit of a cleaner inside definitely is going to feel a lot better once you're wearing the boots. And just to get another needle, do the other one, and move on to the armor. And now that both boots are sewn, they've got a nice taper from the back zipper to the front, again just so the lightning bolt can show the suit through the armor pieces. But I've got all these duct tape patterns, and I wasn't just going to use those, so I need to switch them over to my paper patterns. So let's do that now. Boom, they're done. And now I'm going to explain how the toe cap works. So on the pattern, you're not going to cut in the darts that are in my Etsy pattern. Instead, you're going to use that as a reference guide for sizing. So you're going to take a piece of 2mm foam that's bigger than the pattern piece, and you're going to heat it up. It's really pliable, and you can stretch it over the toe cap for a nice seamless toe piece. Then once it's cooled down, you can use the pattern piece to draw on and size it to make sure you're not cutting it too big or too small. The extra lines on these side parts of the pattern are meant to illustrate raised details. So once you've cut out the main pieces, you're going to cut those boxes out and add an additional layer of 2mm foam in those shapes. Once you have all the parts cut out and the toe cap stretched out, all of your parts for one boot should look a little something like this. The top pieces are all going to be 4mm just to be a little extra sturdy, and then all the bottom pieces are going to be 2mm foam. And the last thing I did before gluing it up was I slightly sanded the edge of all the 4mm pieces, and then just gave it a nice clean rolled in seam that'd be more visible after painting. Now's the part where everything comes together. I've already attached both sides of this middle section just so I can use the center line as a visible guide for all the other parts. I've drawn the outline of the toe cap piece already on there, just so once I go to glue it up, it's a lot easier to place it on and line it up, make sure everything's all together. For the toe cap, I like to start at the back and then roll it down towards the front of the boot. That way I decrease the possibility of having any creases or anything show up in the foam to get a nice smooth toe cap finish, since that's the part that people are going to see the most since it's the front of the boot. And one trick I like to use with the side panels is taking some cardstock and covering up most of the area that's going to get glued down, just so I don't accidentally tack anything down onto the boot without it being perfectly lined up. So I start at the top just so I can get a nice clean straight wrap around the boot for the bottom pieces, and then I take away the cardstock and then press the rest of the side panel down. With both sides glued down and the bottom all trimmed up to the sole of the boot, should look a little something like this. Still able to put the zipper all the way down to be able to slip your foot in, but it's starting to look like a really solid Shazam boot. And now we're going to move on to the top 4mm section. Now with the top section, we're going to work our way up, starting with the very bottom of the 4mm section and doing the third part last. So I'm going to start by aligning the middle of each panel section of the top part, just to make sure the center line is straight going all the way up, and then wrapping it around so they meet around the back where the zipper is. And once it wraps around to the back and I make sure that they both meet up, I double check and make sure all of the seams are pressed down, and then I take an X-Acto knife and trim it straight down to the zipper. That way the zipper is still showing and the foam goes all the way covering up any extra buttons or anything like what are on my boots. Then you're just going to repeat the same step for the second panel on the top section. And once we've glued and trimmed the second panel to the zipper, we're going to move on to the third and final panel. We're only applying glue to the very bottom of this panel because we don't want to cover up the lightning bolt so our suit can still show through. One thing to note is that you can wait to trim and sew your boot to a shortened height till this step. That way you don't have too much of your boot covering the lightning bolt at the very top. And with that, you've finished your very own Shazam boots. Now just to heat seal and paint, and you are ready to rock and roll. And that's how it's done. Again, I'll have patterns to these linked in the description below. They're on my Etsy shop, as well as links to all the tools and materials that I used in this build. They're all Amazon affiliate links. I just joined pretty recently. They're no cost to you to use the links to purchase things from Amazon, but I get a small cut of the purchase, and it helps me out, and it helps me towards my next build or upgrading my video and audio equipment. But I will say, with painting these boots, I did not plastic dip them. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, all I did was heat seal them and then just paint them. I used Angel's leather paints, link in the description below. They are amazing. They're meant for leather shoes, obviously, and what's great is it's not going to crack or crease just like regular acrylic or craft foam paints. Even if you're not using it on boots or shoes or anything like that, it is great for foam because foam is really flexible, so you're not going to get that cracking or creasing like you would with just about any other paint. That's about it for today, guys. I will be coming out with more videos in the future now that I'm on an actual set schedule, I promise. But until next time, this is JB Cosplay, signing out.